Well, welcome. I'm so glad you guys were able to come today and participate in what we call our First Person Stories of Hope series. It's where either we have a survivor, family member, rescue worker, somebody directly impacted by the bombing share their stories so you get a more personal account of how this event affected people. We are so honored to have with us Colonel Kerry Pettingill, the 25th Chief of the Highway Patrol, and has served 30 years with the agency. He began his career in 1982 and has had several specialized assignments, including training, honor guard, bomb squad, and tactical teams, and was the department's liaison to the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force from 1997 to 2001. In February 2002, he was appointed Deputy Director of the Homeland Security Office and created the office here in Oklahoma. In January 2004, he was named the director of the Oklahoma Office of the Homeland Security and Homeland Security Advisor to the governor. He served in both capacities until he was promoted to colonel and named chief of the Highway Patrol in February 2011. So he will tell you his story about that day and his career, and if you have any questions, he'd be happy to answer those. At this time, please welcome Kerry Pettingill.
Thank you, Lynn. Is this working okay? I have to stay in a certain area. I wander, so I have limits, so don't let me fall off here. But how many of you live in Oklahoma City or in Oklahoma? Okay, good. And so the rest of you don't? Right, okay. How many of you have been here before? Great. The funny thing about April 19th, 1995 is that after I finished my tour here, I didn't come back here, and I live in Oklahoma City, and I'd lived in Oklahoma City at the time. I didn't come back here for almost a little over 5 years. I didn't want to come here. And now, I love this place. It's a great place. And so, I had been stationed out in the far western part of Oklahoma and transferred into Oklahoma City as a supervisor here in the Oklahoma City metropolitan area with the Highway Patrol on April 1st, 1995. I had not even moved to Oklahoma City yet. I was essentially living out of a bag out of our training center, which is about 6 miles from here. And on April 19th, besides that, my day-to-day job as a supervisor here in Oklahoma City, I was a supervisor over our tactical operations. And we were staged here in Oklahoma City to go do a surveillance in the southern part of our state on a rest area where there was reported there was a lot of drug and prostitution issues that were going on, and we were going to move down there that morning. So we were in a meeting in the middle of our training center in a conference room, and in civilian clothes because we were going to do surveillance. And all of a sudden our pagers went off and called a certain number. Back, it's not like it is now. All they had were a number. They didn't have messages. It was just a number. And it was our communications center. And there's been an explosion downtown, and everyone is to report for duty. So that means go change clothes and try to get downtown. My radio log showed that I told our dispatcher that I was here at 9:21. So just a few minutes. I had to go throw on some clothes and come down, drive, negotiate traffic. Roads were already blocked somewhat. Had to drive up. Matter of fact, I parked on sidewalk. And I was just off of Harvey, probably 8th Street, about where Southwestern Bell is, which became a staging area. And I walked down, and I remember thinking, of course it was chaotic, a very, very chaotic scene. And I just was trying to determine in my mind what had happened. Was it a natural gas explosion? Downtown airport was still open, so we had small aircraft that would still fly in and out of the downtown airport. Not thinking about what occurred on 9/11 2001, but it was, in my mind, did a small aircraft crash into, the downtown area? Was it something like that? And as I rounded the corner at 5th Street and saw the building, I knew in my mind, I knew that this was not a natural gas explosion, and I obviously couldn't see any debris from an aircraft or anything sticking out. In my time frame, let me just tell you, segments of time for me are missing. I remember certain things very clearly, and then there are some things I couldn't tell you how the time passed. But I do know one thing. Whenever the alarm went off that there was a second device, and everybody was going away, my boss and I, who I'd met up with just right over here on the corner, were going the wrong way, as far as I could tell. If everyone else is going this way, why are we going that way? But we went to a certain staging area and waited for the all clear. Then I had to assemble my people, my team that I already had here. And I will tell you, there is an extreme sense of duty. You have to do something. This is a major deal. People are hurt, people laying all around. When there were people that rushed off that were, literally on the hood of cars, taken over here to the hospital right over here. And unfortunately, as you move forward, bodies strewn about. So what do? Trauma stations set up, assessment areas for those that are injured moving out. It is amazing to me how quickly people left. Self-dispatched themselves away from the area. How quickly it calmed down. I mean, it was probably an hour later, but finally it did calm down. After the alarm went out for the second device, possible device, it really came under control at that time, it seemed like. I was back over on the southwest corner of Harvey from, I think it's 5th Street, there on the corner of the Murrah building. And I went up onto the plaza, and I remember the strangest thing for me was remembering them using a playground area as a temporary staging area or morgue for some of the children's bodies. And so looking at that, for me, I remember thinking it was odd. It was odd that such a place that was supposed to be fun and full of life, that was so dark for me at that time. And I just thought, who made that decision? And it was a logical place, obviously, but for me, they didn't think about that. But for me, that was just one of the things that naturally started running through my mind. Once my team was here, I'd met up with a couple of people with the federal law enforcement services because there were several of them in the building. And there were concerns about securing evidence, concerns about securing certain weapons and things that they had on different levels. And I'll tell you right now, that's just silliness. Hindsight's 20/20, and it is amazing the things that you do during those times that once you get an opportunity to look back on it, it was really silly. So I took a team of 10 troopers, and we went into the building. We made our way through every floor, up through rubble, all around, You could walk out in one area and there's nothing there. You had to absolutely watch every step that you took, because we needed to do something, and we thought we would make sure that things are secure. Well, guess what? No one was going to go in that building. We were the only silly ones that were doing it. I mean, it was probably the worst decision that I have ever made. But it was a tremendous learning lesson for me as well. But we made our way through every floor. We had these great plans on how we would exit, rapidly exit the building if things started collapsing. We thought they were great plans. Hindsight, probably couldn't carry them out. And so those are all things that I took with me in my future career too. Knowing that you have to stop, regardless of how terrible something is that you're witnessing. Sometimes the best thing for you to do is nothing. Because decisions I made that day put 10 people's lives in danger. Every step we took, were we causing this building to shift? We couldn't move anything. You had to crawl over everything. There was people still down below us. We knew that the one young lady was still trapped, and the doctors were working on her to amputate a limb so that she could be extricated from the building. We knew they were down there. But, was there someone else that no one knew about? And I will tell you, there was none. I mean, the only people we came across were deceased. And making the decisions to do nothing there either, I'm pretty sure that it's a crime scene. Everything there's evidence. Don't touch anything, don't move anything. And then we came out. So essentially, spent lots of time in that building for no reason whatsoever, other than this thought that we may need to protect some things. Well, all that stuff was covered up. There was nothing we were going to do. And it should have been extremely obvious to us as well. I think that the great thing about Oklahoma is what's known as the Oklahoma Standard, the response. The heroes of the day were obviously the people that were immediately affected by the explosion. The people that helped each other out of these buildings, the people that were on the streets that helped other people immediately evacuate from the area and get them to hospitals. The calmness that many of them showed as they left this building and some of the others and help people. Because when you walked out the door over here on Robinson Street, there's a line of cars. And every one of those cars, the roof of them were caved in all the way to the top of where the top of the windowsills of them. And all that was the shock wave. As the bomb detonated and the shock wave had to go somewhere, so it took the path of the streets and it rippled down through there. It was so dense that it crushed the tops of the cars. And so, and this building's still here, It's a great old building. But it was obviously something I'd never seen, something I hope I never see again. But the positive, again, is the Oklahoma Standard, the way everybody came together. My days after the 19th were very much, we had perimeters. We dealt with as a state law enforcement agency, we dealt with all the other law enforcement agencies, not Oklahoma City, that were coming in to assist, and made assignments, and it was not a very glamorous job. I was able to help make assignments for details for troopers to fly with FBI agents up to Perry to bring Timothy McVeigh back to Oklahoma City once it was determined that he was in the county jail up there. And that's a couple of days later. But the initial response was just, I guess, a daze. But I didn't want to come back here. And I was forced to at one point in time because of my wife. She had an aunt and uncle that came in from Pennsylvania, and they wanted to come downtown, so we brought them downtown. And as I walked them around, of course, the memorial wasn't here at that time. And so we were walking through the streets, and I was telling them exactly the way everything was that day, because I knew exactly where everything was. And my wife's uncle came over and touched me on the arm, and he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Sure." You know, why? And he said, "Because you're seeing this." I said, "Well, I know. And I see it every time I walk through here. It's something that will never go away." But I didn't want to be here. And in 1999, I was involved in another incident that in our agency is a critical incident which requires you to go to a critical incident decompression, de-stress deal, and it's a 3-day deal which, you go talk to psychologists and stuff, and we don't like that, because we don't need it. And my team, same guys that were with me here that day, even though we were in a very traumatic incident, spent a day and a half of 3 days talking about April 19th, 1995. Because we had never talked about it. And after that, it was easier to just drive by. But as Lynn said, I had various opportunities over the years and became the Homeland Security Director for the state of Oklahoma. And during the course of all of that, I've always been an ambassador for the memorial and for the museum, because I believe that any person that's in public safety, any person that is in the Homeland Security field should absolutely be required to come here. I had great opportunities during that time to speak to, I've met with all 3 of the Homeland Security Secretaries for the United States, and during those times, every time, I told them, you have to come here. You have to come to Oklahoma City. You have to see the museum, and you have to go through the museum first, is what I tell them, and then go out to the memorial. You have to do that. Tom Ridge came after he served as a secretary, and I had an opportunity to meet with him here, and I said, "I know you're not going to remember me, but I told you." And he acknowledged, he remembered someone telling him, and he said, "You're right, they should." I never could get Michael Chertoff to come, but we were able to host Janet Napolitano here for some meetings. And she said that, you're right. Everyone should come here. This should be a starting point. And I feel that once the memorial is finalized in New York City, anybody that's in this type of work should visit them as well. We can't allow, especially Oklahomans, to ever forget what transpired here on April 19th, 1995. It seems to me like yesterday. It was not that long ago to me. And it is so very important that we can't forget. I know, there are mean people in this world, and they just didn't go away. There are many people like Timothy McVeigh that still live here in the United States. There are many people like Ramzi Youssef and others that are still living in the world and want to cause us harm. And we cannot become complacent in our daily lives. We live in a great nation. We can walk daily without fear. But don't be blind to what exists out there. If you can talk to any police officer or EMT or even firefighters in your cities, and they'll tell you that once you're in bed at night, your great little town is a whole different place. It's the town you don't ever see. And that's everywhere. But the thing is that we can't ever forget what has happened to us, and we can never forget that those people still exist. And while we shouldn't ever live in fear, we should never live in fear. We just have to have the knowledge that it's occurring, and we have to be able to speak out and tell people when we see something that is strange, unusual, out of place, and then we have a responsibility to ensure that we follow up. And I think a lot of things transpired prior to April 19th, 1995 that had somebody followed up on it, they would have probably intercepted Timothy McVeigh before he ever perpetrated this act. But things were a lot different back then. You know, communications between public safety was not that great. But it's better today. I will tell you that. It's much better than it has ever been. And it will continue to get better because it can never be perfect. But we have to strive to try to make it perfect, I suppose. All right, does anyone have any questions? Yes, ma'am, in the back.